Hey everybody, it's T-Mac from CloseCallSports.com. We're going to do a broadcaster breakdown. Let's listen to what David Cone had to say about this correct start and stop balk call.
And a balk. A run will score. The runner will move to second. You could hear it was the second base umpire, I think, who called it.
Oh, boy, I'm going to go off on a rant here, Michael. You know how I love this balk rule. Oh, just a subtle little flinch there. Very subtle. It had nothing to do with anything. Barney Fife on second base is going to call it. Yeah, you got it right. Yeah, it's in the rule book. Why it's in the rule book, I have no idea. But that little flinch, that subtle little move of his hips, a fraction of an inch, has an impact on this baseball game now.
First of all, it wasn't the hip flinch that was called, it was the hands. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a sec. T-Mac, start up.
Tremendous props to Junior Valentine for correctly assessing that flinch by rule is a start and stop.
Thanks, Timmy. Let me emphasize really quickly. Look at the pitcher's hand that has the ball in it and look at his glove. Notice how they start to come together and then they stop. Then and only then does the pitcher step off with the pivot foot. Rule 507A2 states that when you're going from stretch to set, it has to be, quote, without interruption and in one continuous motion. Because he started, then stopped, then stepped off, that's a violation of the rule. Back to you.
The first base umpire and the plate umpire echo the balk call. Greg Gibson, the crew chief, in the background, making the secondary call there. But I want to talk about broadcasters.
Good idea. Just for context, this is a replay of what we just showed you. Remember what I said about watching the pitcher's hands? Now listen to the broadcasters describe it.
Technically speaking, he got it right.
So you just don't think that should be a rule?
It makes no sense to me at all. It really doesn't. You're not trying to deceive a runner. It has to do with nothing. He stepped off he started his motion a little bit and then stepped off the rubber. The whole purpose of a balk call is to stop pitchers from deceiving the runner, to try an illegal pickoff move. The purpose of that balk call escapes me.
Without getting into the interpretation of the purpose of the rule and why the broadcaster got that wrong, the quote, he started his motion a little bit and then stepped off the rubber, is literally the definition of a start-stop balk. So why the broadcaster didn't cite the rule, I have no idea. It does nothing to call umpires names. Here, we will call umpires out if they get things wrong, as we did with the novice out of the base path play. But we will not call them names because we don't want to dehumanize people. Anyway, T-Mac, you have a better rant than I do, so go ahead.
If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Name calling to umpires at the big league level, well, that lets every person that's listening within the sound of your voice think, well, these big league umpires stink. So when I go to my youth game, I'm going to rip on those umpires because the big league umpires stink. These umpires must stink too. The perception is that Major League Baseball umpires aren't very good. Part of it is because all of the inundation people get from the negative websites, and you know what they are. But also part of the problem is we don't do enough to educate the broadcasters as to what the rules are. So even when David Cone admits that the call is correct, he's still giving fodder to the fans to pile on umpires. Name calling of umpires is ridiculous, and it should be condemned by every broadcaster. It's an embarrassment. You wouldn't say it to a player. You wouldn't say it to somebody on the street, let's hope. Don't say it to millions of people. It doesn't do any good. These umpires are the best they've ever been. From a ball strike standpoint, the training is as good as it's ever been. The numbers on the bases, as far as replay goes, the lowest overturn rate ever. The umpires keep getting better and better, but micro-analyzing correct calls and trying to tell the public that they're wrong is doing no good. We need to do better. So this trickles down, I mentioned it earlier, to the youth games. We have a shortage of youth umpires because of abuse from fans, coaches, players. Nobody wants to go out there and get yelled at, and broadcasters are a big reason that people believe umpires across the board are not very good. If you know a broadcaster and you hear him do something like David Cone just did, reach out to him, text him, say, hey, be nice to those guys. Maybe follow CloseCallSports.com to find out just how good they are. We're doing it here. We've reached out to many, and you know what? For the most part, when we reach out to people and they get back to us, they're very receptive. I'm in the industry. I can tell you that broadcasters are actually pretty nice and they want to get stuff right. And in the heat of the moment, they might say something wrong, but for the most part, they mean well. But let's make sure they're educated to what the rules are and that they don't punch down at umpires. Okay, this rant's over. Let's listen to what David Cohn had to say later about that balk and his apology. And until next time, happy umpiring, everyone.
Yeah, it's a balk, technically speaking. He got it right.
And you dropped a fife on Junior Valentine at second.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Junior. That was uncalled for. It's over the top. Piling on.
Unfortunately, people just see the 10-second clip of you calling him a name and not the apology 2 minutes later.
In case you don't know who Barney Fife is, go to YouTube.
Great Don Knotts.
Yes, Don Knotts. He was on Scooby-Doo as a guest one time.
He was the incredible Mr. Olympic, too,
Yes.
the talking fish.
Ron Knotts! Ron Knotts!